In the small, sleepy town of Oak Ridge, the night seemed to stretch on forever. The streets, lined with crooked trees and old stone houses, were shrouded in a constant, thick fog. For years, the people had lived in a strange quietness, an eerie stillness that permeated everything, until she arrived. Her name was Evelyn Carver, a woman with strikingly pale skin and long dark hair that fell like a veil around her face. She was an outsider, and her arrival was met with wary glances and hushed conversations in every corner of Oak Ridge. Evelyn had no family in town, no friends, only the soft, persistent pull of something deeper, something that had called her to this place. Evelyn rented a small cottage on the outskirts, just near the woods that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. It was an odd place to settle, and the locals often wondered why anyone would choose to live there. But Evelyn was not one to follow conventions. There was something in Oak Ridge she was drawn to, something she couldn't explain. She had heard whispers of it all her life, though she'd never understood the significance until now. It started the very first night she settled in. At first, Evelyn thought it was the wind, a strange breeze sweeping through the trees, but then it grew louder, too deliberate, too insistent. It was a voice, faint at first, like a soft whisper in the distance. But as the night deepened, so did the intensity of the voice. "Come closer," it beckoned. The voice felt familiar, like a memory from a distant dream. Evelyn didn't recognize the words, yet they seemed to call to something deep within her, something long buried and forgotten. She rose from her bed, drawn by an invisible force, and walked out into the night, guided by the eerie murmurs that grew louder with every step. The trees around her seemed to lean in, their shadows twisting into shapes she couldn't quite make sense of. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something far more ancient. "Come closer, Evelyn. Come to us." The next morning, Evelyn tried to dismiss the incident as a product of her imagination, but something lingered in her mind, a lingering feeling that wouldn't let go. She spent the day wandering around Oak Ridge, trying to learn more about its past, and perhaps uncovering the cause of the whispers. She visited the local library, a musty, dimly lit building filled with old leather-bound books and forgotten lore. An elderly librarian named Mrs. Holloway greeted her, her eyes sharp and calculating despite her frailty. "Looking for something, dear?" Mrs. Holloway asked with a knowing smile. "I'm just trying to understand the history of this town. There's something odd about Oak Ridge. It feels like there's something hidden beneath the surface." Mrs. Holloway's smile faded, her gaze shifting to the dark corners of the library. "Ah, you feel it too, don't you? The whispers in the dark. They come for those who hear them. Oak Ridge is a town with many secrets, and some of them are best left undisturbed." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of secrets?" Mrs. Holloway glanced around nervously. "There's a place in Oak Ridge, hidden beneath the earth, where things older than time sleep. It is a well, a portal, to something ancient, something that speaks in the shadows." Evelyn's curiosity burned brighter. "How do you know this?" Mrs. Holloway hesitated. "I've heard the whispers, too. I've seen what lies beneath Oak Ridge. The question is, do you want to know more? Can you handle what you might find?" Evelyn stared at her for a long time before nodding. "I have to know. I have to understand." That night, the whispers were louder, more insistent. They beckoned her once again, guiding her to the forest that bordered Oak Ridge. This time, Evelyn was ready. She followed the voice through the twisting trees until she reached an ancient stone structure, half hidden by moss and vines. It was a well, just as Mrs. Holloway had described, but it was no ordinary well. The stone was etched with symbols, long forgotten by time, and the air around it, hummed with an energy that made the hairs on Evelyn's arms stand on end. The whispers grew more intense, urging her to peer into the darkness of the well. Evelyn leaned over the edge, and for a brief moment, she saw a flash of light deep within the stone, a golden glow that flickered like a heartbeat. Then, something reached up from the depths. It was a shadow, long and twisting, curling like smoke, and it stretched toward her with a will of its own. She recoiled, her breath caught in her throat. The shadow lingered for a moment, then withdrew, retreating back into the well, leaving only a faint echo of its presence in her mind. But it wasn't done with her. "Come," the voice whispered, now no longer a mere murmur. It was a command, filled with an unnatural urgency. "You are ours." Evelyn stumbled back, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't understand." A deep laughter echoed from the well, rich and dark, like the rumble of thunder in the distance. "You will. All of you will. The town was never meant to forget." Evelyn could no longer deny it. There was something ancient, something powerful hidden beneath Oak Ridge. But what she didn't know was that the town had always been a vessel for this dark force. The people of Oak Ridge had built the well centuries ago, unknowingly linking their town to the shadowy entity below. As the days passed, Evelyn delved deeper into the town's history, uncovering old journals and documents that told of a pact made long ago. The townspeople had sacrificed part of themselves, binding their souls to the entity in exchange for prosperity and protection. Over time, they had forgotten the true cost of their bargain, until the whispers began to stir once more, calling to those who had the blood of the ancient ones in their veins. Evelyn's arrival in Oak Ridge had been no accident. She was a descendant of the original settlers, the bloodline that held the key to awakening the entity beneath the town. The whispers had been searching for her, guiding her toward her true purpose. One night, as the full moon bathed the town in pale light, Evelyn stood at the edge of the well once more. The whispers called to her, stronger than ever, urging her to unlock the final door that would release the entity from its centuries-long slumber. "Join us," the voice whispered. "Embrace your destiny." Evelyn stood silent, her mind racing. She knew what the entity would do if it were released. Oak Ridge would fall, consumed by shadows. But in her blood ran the ancient power of her ancestors, the key to binding the darkness once and for all. As she stared into the depths of the well, Evelyn made her choice. With a single, decisive motion, she cast a silver coin into the well, invoking the ancient spell she had uncovered. The well trembled, and for a moment, the whispers grew to a deafening crescendo. Then silence. The shadows recoiled, and the entity's influence faded, buried once again beneath Oak Ridge. But Evelyn knew it wasn't over. The shadows were patient, and one day they would return. And when they did, she would be ready.